Okay, thanks for joining me for today's episode. I wanted to cover this idea of implicit symptoms. Goodness, I've kicked back into my doctor mode there. That's pretty funny. Yes, I am actually a legitimate doctor. I've been a general practitioner for about 10 years. But I also got into business after my family imploded around my father's relative inability to understand, manage, and look after money. And this was years and years ago. The problems were probably there through most of the 1990s, but it all blew up and ended up in my parents' divorce by 2001. And the actual problem was his lack of understanding about business, about money. Even though he was an obstetrician gynecologist, there was plenty of money coming in. He just didn't give a fuck about it. He was like, well, whatever, there's lots of it. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm not going to upskill. And you got to remember, back in the 90s, this was before Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This was before any kind of like understanding, at least in my world, that part of being a doctor was having to look after businesses. So I went off and was hurting from this experience. I saw how much chaos it caused to my family, to my father, to my mother. And I was like, okay, I had this cool experience where one of our family friends who also was a specialist doctor gave me this book, and it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was like, hey, Tom, you probably should check this out. This is cool. Have a look at this. Pay attention to this. And that was my first exposure to what do the rich do differently. If you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, then you probably should. But there's a lot of really interesting ideas. And over the 20 years since I've read that book, my understanding about what he is talking about has changed. And principle in that is an idea of buying an asset. That you buy, the rich people buy the asset, and then that creates cash flow. And this was my story. This was my adventure. And I ended up creating a business called Graduate Medicine. And this business in itself was a major learning experience. I was like, wow, there is a lot going on. And my usual work as a general practitioner, I was involved in a business. I was part of a business, but I was an employee or a contractor to that business. My job was to come in, see the patients, get them better, see the next patient, get them better, see the next patient, get them better. I didn't have to deal with the accounting of the business, the marketing of the business, the fulfillment systems, the safety systems, any of that stuff. That wasn't my job. That was the practice. I paid the practice to deal with that. And my role in terms of managing myself as a business was essentially, hey, here's a meeting with an accountant. We'll go through the zero files. Let's work out how this affects your tax strategy. But graduate medicine was an entirely different experience. It really showed me that I knew very little about actually running a business. And I had done lots of courses. I've been a Frank Kern devotee for some time. If you don't know who Frank is, Frank, basically the consultant for internet marketing. And he's been doing it a very long time. I think he's at year 20, 21 years now, started in 1999. And he wonderful, I mean, amazing stuff. Frank's really cool, but there's a lot of other ones. You can see behind me here, Russell Brunson. I think Russell's stuff is incredible. I mean, really, the Secrets trilogy is phenomenal for business. But for whatever reason, I had an experience of working at my practice where our systems were implicit. They weren't largely written down, or in fact, no, they weren't implicit. What they were explicit, but they didn't match to what was being done. No one actually used them. And this is a problem. This is a problem. And I've interviewed other business owners and find out what they're doing. And often there's just like, well, we're small enough where we can run on implicit systems. Everyone kind of knows what we do. There's a culture of, yep, this is how we do it. And we just kind of like work our way through. Then there are definitely businesses that have explicit systems, but they don't match to what's actually being done. And this is a problem because then it's like, well, hang on, it says to do this, but we're doing this. And if you run into problems, then it's like, well, we'll go back to what was written down, but that's not what was happening. It's like, oh, okay. So you really have dead set of systems. They're gathering dust on the bookshelf. They're not actually being used. No one actually reviews them, or it's been years. There's no tracking of when they went through them. And what I've had in medicine is a very interesting experience in that the disability sector is very much on this, and it sucks for them. They're like, why have we got to go through this every 3 months? But at least they are reviewing it to some degree. It's not a surprise to go, oh, by the way, this is how we do things. They actually have to go through and sign off. And this is to me is an example of a sector that is too big to run on implicit systems. There's too many people that to look after one disability client, you're probably looking at least 5, 6 people. And so for a house that has 4 or 5 disabled clients, you're looking at a staff of maybe 20 plus ancillary staff, and you're probably looking at 24 people. And that's well beyond the usual understanding of the number of people that can work together before there's problems. That's usually 5, 6, or 7. And then you've also got compliance issues. Have things been signed off? Where's the money coming from? In Australia, this money is very often coming from the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which means that it's public money. It has to be accounted for. It has to be looked after. And so they are forced to put in explicit systems and then also have them signed off. Now, there's one more stage beyond that, and that is where the processes are actually used in the creation of the work or the deployment of the work. And this could be a system to create assets. Now, this in a disability experience is probably not common. Maybe once a year there's a review of what's already been done, and then a new plan will be created for that client. But in businesses, this would be a reasonably common experience. Right now, this is a creation experience that I am doing for you. I am creating a Facebook Live, which is an asset for my business. But then there's a secondary part, which is the deployment of this asset. And that's where the system for the deployment comes in. It runs through a series of A to B tasks where this video is extracted out of Facebook, and then it's taken to Otter.ai and it's transcribed into a transcription. Then from there, the title can be extracted for the YouTube, the subtitles can be placed on, the quote cards can be created, the podcast can be created. But beyond all of this is, how did I create those systems? And this to me is the holy grail of business. If you have a system to create systems, then wherever you need it in your business, whether it's in marketing to create your messaging or to create your offers, whether it is in sales to create a funnel or to create a phone system, to create an application questionnaire, whether it's in advertising to create paid ads or organic SEO, whether it's in fulfillment in terms of tracking your clients, getting testimonials, getting case studies. The systems for all of those can be created if you have this holy grail, the system that creates systems. So what I want to ask you is, where are you in this journey of systematization? Maybe you're too small right now. Maybe you're not doing $1 million a year in revenue. Maybe you've got less than 5 people and you are running on implicit systems, which is totally fine. That's the way to do it up until the point where you hit those limits, and you can push beyond them without systems, but you're unlikely to get beyond maybe 2 or 3 million a year in revenue, and it will be stressful. It can be done, but to go beyond 3 to 10 or 20 or 50 or 100, like at some level, you are going to need to have a way of doing things in your business so that the number of people that you have working together know how to work together. So where are you? That's my question for you right now. Are you at implicit systems? Are you at explicit systems, but they're not used? They're not what's been going on. Are you at explicit systems and people use them? Like, you got that going on? You are dialed in, ready to grow, to go from where you are through to that next level, whether it's 3, 5, 10, maybe 20, maybe 100. And if you have this, then you are in a very good place. If you do not, and you want some help around this, head over to systemio.dev, pop on your name, pop in your email address, and grab the training about how you can begin to transition to a systematized business. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you have an awesome day. I'm going to go and grab lunch with one of my buddies and talk a little bit about systems and business. I hope you have an awesome day. I look forward to seeing you on tomorrow's episode, where we continue this interesting discussion of how to go from no systems to systems in your business. See you then.